Tonight I want to start by talking about the single most underrated minute of your entire day. You spend roughly a third of your life asleep. You already know this. It's one of the very few things every human being has in common. Whatever else separates us, we all close our eyes at the end of the day and hand ourselves over, for hours, to a state we can't control, where a different mind quietly takes the wheel and does its work in the dark. But here's what almost nobody ever points out. You don't flip from awake to asleep instantly. There's a doorway between the two, a narrow, nearly invisible passage that takes anywhere from a few seconds to a few minutes to cross. And whatever you're carrying through that doorway, whatever you're inwardly being in the moment, right before sleep pulls you under, sinks down with you into the layer beneath your conscious mind. It enters the part of you that doesn't argue, the part that doesn't audit, the part that simply accepts whatever arrives and quietly weaves it into the fabric of who you are. This narrow passage, this brief crossing that happens every single night, is the single most powerful minute of your day. Not because there's anything mystical about it, because of how the mind actually works. In that minute, the gatekeeper of your conscious thinking softens. The auditor that spends all day filtering, questioning, second-guessing, finally clocks out. The inner critic goes quiet. And whatever inner state you're occupying as you cross that threshold goes down with you into the part of you that builds. And here's the question I want to put in front of you tonight, the one this whole talk is built around. Who have you been when you crossed that threshold? Because most people, and I mean nearly everyone, fall asleep as the old version of themselves, the tired one, the one who's behind, the one still rehearsing today's worries, the one whose inner voice is still muttering the same lines it's been muttering for years. They drop into sleep as that self, every single night, and the absorbent layer beneath takes that self in and reinforces it, faithfully, hour after hour, while they rest. In other words, most people spend the most powerful minute of their day reinforcing the exact self they claim they want to change, without ever realizing it. And then they wonder why their life keeps looking the same. Tonight I'm going to hand you a different practice. A specific, simple, vivid practice that takes only a minute, costs you nothing, requires no special setup, and asks only one thing of you, that you cross the threshold of sleep every single night as the new version of yourself, as the version who already has what you want, as the version you're quietly becoming, in the dark, while the world is still catching up. Because if you fall asleep, night after night, as the new you, your life simply cannot stay the same. It has to bend. It has no other option. Let me describe, very precisely, what's actually happening in the minute before sleep, so you can start feeling it for yourself tonight. If you've ever lain in bed and noticed the strange quality of those final moments before sleep, you've already brushed against what I'm about to teach. Your body softens. The day's tension finally starts to release. Your thoughts slow down. The sharp, focused, daytime quality of your mind starts dissolving, and a different kind of awareness takes its place. Softer, dreamier, less argumentative. You can still think, but your thoughts no longer have sharp edges. They drift, they merge into images. The line between thought and dream starts to blur. Neuroscientists call this brain state theta. It's the state your brain enters between full waking and full sleep, and it's one of the most receptive states a human mind ever occupies. Hypnotists use it. Athletes doing mental rehearsal at night use it. Children spend much of their early life immersed in it. It's the state where the part of your mind that usually says, "No, that's not true," That's not how things are. That's never going to happen. That part has gone quiet. The auditor has clocked out. The gatekeeper has stepped aside. And whatever enters the mind in that state sinks far deeper than anything you could possibly absorb during the day. This is the doorway. This is the absorbent minute. This is the brief, recurring, completely free window the architecture of the human mind hands you every single night for as long as you live. And almost everyone wastes it. They lie in bed and let the inner voice keep running its daytime commentary, just quieter, but with the same effect. I should have said this. I shouldn't have done that. Tomorrow's going to be rough. The money isn't enough. I'm behind. I'm tired. I'm the one who never quite gets there. And whatever the voice says in that softened, absorbent theta state sinks down into the deepest layer of the mind, where it gets quietly woven into the fabric of who they're becoming. Or worse, they fall asleep with their phone in hand. The last thing their mind absorbs is whatever the algorithm happened to serve up. Outrage, comparison, fear, longing, the curated lives of total strangers. That content sinks straight through the doorway and lands right where your inner architecture gets built. And then they wonder why they wake up tired, vaguely heavy, uncertain who they even are. This isn't a small thing. This is your single most receptive minute. Used unconsciously, it reinforces every old self you've been trying to leave behind. Used deliberately, it becomes one of the most powerful tools you'll ever have for changing your life from the inside out. I want to walk you through, mechanically, why this minute carries the weight it does. Because if you understand the mechanism, you'll actually use the practice. And if you don't, you'll listen to this lecture, nod along, and forget it by Sunday. Your mind is layered. There's a surface layer, the conscious, deliberate, daytime mind, the one that thinks in sentences, makes decisions, argues with itself. Most people identify this layer as themselves. It's loud, opinionated, articulate, constant during waking hours. Beneath this layer sits something quieter and far more powerful. Call it the subconscious, call it the deep mind, call it the operating system. The label doesn't matter. What matters is what it does. This deeper layer is where your actual assumptions live, your self-concept, your felt sense of who you are, your reflexive expectations for how life behaves, your habitual emotional responses. This layer doesn't articulate anything. It doesn't think in sentences. It simply holds. And whatever it holds, your outer life faithfully expresses as conditions. Now here's the key point. That deep layer is mostly sealed off during the day by the surface layer. The surface mind is loud, argumentative, protective. Anything you try to plant in the deeper layer during the day has to get past the surface layer first, and the surface layer almost always rejects it. That's not true. That's not realistic. That's not who I am. Stop pretending. And so most attempts to change the deep mind during daylight hours fail. Not because the technique was flawed, but because the surface mind blocked the seed before it could ever land. But in the minute right before sleep, the surface mind softens. The auditor stops auditing. The gatekeeper steps aside. The protective barrier between the surface and the deep layer thins out. And whatever you carry across that threshold, whatever you're inwardly being in that moment, sinks down, almost unimpeded, into the deep mind. The deep mind doesn't argue. It doesn't check your bank balance to see if you're really wealthy. It doesn't glance at your calendar to see if you're really relaxed. It just receives. It receives whatever state you hand it. And because the barrier is down, that state goes straight into the place where your self-concept gets built, the layer that actually generates your life. This is why 1 minute of deliberate inner work right before sleep can shift your underlying self-concept more than an hour of effort during the day. Not because nighttime is magical, because the gate is open. The layer you've been trying to reach all day, the layer that does the real work, is finally accessible, but only for a moment, and only if you use that moment deliberately. And the absorbent layer doesn't just receive your conscious intentions, it receives the state you're actually in. So what you carry across the threshold isn't the words you happen to say in that minute, it's the inner self you're being while those words happen. If you tell yourself, "I am wealthy," while inwardly inhabiting the state of someone broke and worried, the absorbent layer will receive the state, not the sentence. "Broke and worried" gets planted instead. The sentence does nothing on its own. This is exactly why the practice I'm about to give you focuses on being the new self, not on saying any particular thing. Because the absorbent layer reads inner state, and the inner state you carry across the threshold is the state you're reinforcing every single night. So here's the practice itself. I want you to use it tonight, not next week, not once you feel ready, tonight. Because the first night is your first vote, and votes accumulate. The practice has 4 small steps. The whole thing takes a minute, sometimes less. It costs nothing. It doesn't interrupt anything else in your routine. It's meant to slide into the very last conscious minute of your day, right where you're currently wasting that minute, scrolling your phone, or anxiously replaying the day. Just swap out 1 minute, that's all. Step 1. Settle into bed. Once you're lying down, lights off, ready for sleep, take 3 slow breaths, and let your body sink into the mattress. Notice the weight of your body against the bed. Notice that you no longer have to hold yourself up. The day is done. Whatever's unfinished can stay unfinished until morning. This minute doesn't take effort. It's more like settling than doing. Step 2. Choose the new self. Gently bring to mind the version of you who already has what you want. Not what they own. Not what they look like. Who they are. The version of you for whom the thing you want is normal, settled, already true. The version whose inner climate is the climate of having, not the climate of wanting. You don't need to build an elaborate picture of this person. You just need to acknowledge them. Just bring them into the room of your own awareness. A simple inner gesture. That one. That's who I am tonight. If you're not sure who they are, ask yourself one question. Who would I be if the thing I want had already happened? Whatever answer rises up, calm, confident, easy, at peace, held, loved, capable, free. That's the new self, the one you're crossing the threshold as. Step 3. Inhabit them casually for 1 minute. This is the heart of the whole practice. You take on the inner posture of the new self, and you simply sit inside it, not by performing it, not by straining to feel something dramatic, by simply being. Let your inner body settle into their carriage, their breathing, their pace, their casual off-courseness about the life they're living. Imagine you're them in the most ordinary way possible. They're lying in their own bed, in their own life, on an unremarkable night. The thing you've been wanting is simply how their life is now. They're not excited about it. They're not relieved. It isn't new to them. It's normal. They're settling in for sleep at the end of an ordinary day in which their life simply works. Be them. Spend 1 minute, no more, inhabiting this. Less, if you start drifting toward sleep. Drifting is good. That's exactly what you want. This practice isn't meant to keep you awake. It's meant to be the very last thing you're being, before sleep takes you. If sleep arrives sooner than the minute is up, even better. You've already crossed the threshold as them. The work is done. Step 4. Cross the threshold as them. This is the most important part, and also the simplest. Whatever you're doing in the very last moment of consciousness, whatever inner self you're inhabiting as sleep finally takes you, that's the self who crosses the threshold. Make sure it's them. Don't let your mind drift, at the last second, back into the old voice. But what about tomorrow? But what about the money? But what about that conversation? If you catch the old voice creeping back in, gently return to the new self. Right before sleep, inhabit them once more, and then let go. Sleep arrives. The new self goes through the doorway. That's the whole practice. 1 minute, 4 small steps. Tonight, tomorrow, every night after that. Now let me tell you what will happen as you do this, because it matters that you know what to expect. Otherwise you'll quit before the change has finished settling in. The first few nights, this will feel strange. You'll doubt it's doing anything at all. You'll lie there inhabiting the new self for 1 minute, and it will feel like a costume, not a home. You'll fall asleep wondering whether this is even worth the effort. This is completely normal. Every single person feels this way in the first week of the practice. The new groove is faint. The old self still feels overwhelmingly more real, because you've been living inside it for years. 1 minute against 30 years feels, in the moment, like nothing at all. But the layer underneath is receiving, quietly, faithfully. Each night, the new self crosses the threshold a little more deeply. Each night, the new self crosses the threshold a little more deeply. Each night, the new self crosses the threshold a little more deeply. You won't feel this happening. You won't notice it on day 3, or day 5, or day 7. The work is happening in the dark, below what you can consciously perceive. Around the 2nd or 3rd week, you'll start noticing small things during the day. The old inner voice, the one that used to mutter its familiar lines, will sometimes pause and simply not say them. A situation that would have once triggered the old self will come up, and you'll respond, just slightly, differently. In an unguarded moment, you'll find yourself carrying yourself like the new self, without having consciously decided to. These are the first signs the threshold work is taking hold. Don't analyze them. Don't measure them. Just keep going with the practice. Each night, the new self through the doorway. Each night, the layer underneath receiving. Around the 2nd or 3rd month, the change starts to become undeniable. People who know you will notice something different about you before you've even noticed it yourself. Your reactions to events will have shifted. Things that used to set you off now land softly. Things that once felt out of reach start feeling possible. The conditions of your life will start showing small movements, unexpected opportunities, encounters that feel quietly significant, a sense that the universe has somehow started leaning in your favor. This isn't magic. This is the predictable result of inhabiting a different self, in the most absorbent minute of your day, every night, for a few months. The layer underneath has been receiving the new instructions, and that layer underneath is what generates your life. Of course, things are starting to shift. They couldn't have done anything else. And around the 6th month, though I can't promise you an exact timeline, Since lives differ and conditions vary, you'll look up one day and realize that the version of you you've been crossing the threshold as has somehow become the version of you you simply are during the day. The new self is no longer a 1-minute practice. It's become the floor of your inner house. It's who you are reflexively, when you're not even paying attention, and the conditions of your life, faithful to that new floor, have arranged themselves accordingly. This is how lives actually change from the inside out, not through dramatic single moments, through small absorbent minutes, performed nightly, for as long as it takes, without strain, without performance, without anyone watching, just a quiet crossing of the threshold, each night, as someone a little closer to the person you're becoming. Let me save you some time by telling you the 3 mistakes almost everyone makes with this practice. Avoid these, and the practice will work for you. Fall into them, and you'll get frustrated and quit before the layer underneath has had time to receive. The first mistake is trying too hard. People hear about this practice and treat it like a spiritual workout. They lie in bed and force themselves to feel the new self with tremendous intensity. They strain, they concentrate, they try to summon the state. And the harder they strain, the more the state slips away, because straining itself is the state of not having. You can't strenuously inhabit anything, of course. The strain contradicts the very thing you're trying to be. The practice works through casualness, not intensity. You're not performing the new self for some inner audience. You're simply being them, the ordinary way you'd be yourself on any quiet night. Soft, settled, unremarkable. The texture is, of course, this is who I am. Of course, this is how my life is. If you catch yourself straining, soften. The practice does its work in the soft moments, not the forceful ones. The second mistake is using the wrong content. People take this practice and use it to picture the thing they want. They visualize the house, the money, the partner, the body, thinking that picturing these vividly is the whole practice. It isn't. The practice was never about picturing what they have. It's about being who they are, the inner state, not the outer scene. You don't have to picture anything in detail at all. You only have to inhabit the one who already has. Their inner climate, their casualness, the settled feeling of being them. The pictures can be present or absent. They don't matter. What matters is whether the absorbent layer receives the state of having or the state of wanting. And only the state of being can carry the state of having. The third mistake is checking the next morning. People run the practice for 3 nights, and then on the 4th morning, they check their outer life to see if anything's shifted yet. They check the bank balance, scroll through messages, scan for evidence. And of course, the outer world hasn't caught up yet. 3 nights isn't enough for the layer underneath to fully receive, let alone for conditions to rearrange themselves around the new self. So they conclude the practice isn't working, and they quit. 5 days before the first signs would have shown up. Don't check, don't measure, don't audit. Just do the practice. 1 minute, every night, without expectation, without scanning for confirmation. Checking is the very thing that confirms the old state and keeps the new one from taking hold. In exchange for its enormous power, this practice asks you to trust it, to plant the seed and walk away, to let the layer underneath do its quiet, faithful work in the dark, without your supervision. And one ordinary morning, weeks or months from now, you'll realize something has changed, without ever having caught the exact moment it shifted. So here's what I want you to carry with you tonight, into the single most absorbent minute of your day. You've been crossing the threshold of sleep every single night of your life as someone. The question was never whether you cross as someone, you always do. The only real question has been who. And for most of your life, you've crossed unconsciously as the same tired, familiar default self. And the absorbent layer underneath has faithfully received that self, reinforced it, and built a life to match it. Tonight, that ends. Tonight, you start choosing. Tonight, in the final minute before sleep, you'll gently bring to mind the version of you who already has what you want. You'll inhabit them, casually, for one quiet minute, their inner carriage, their settled of-courseness. The texture of being someone for whom the thing you want is simply how their life already is. And you'll let sleep take you as them. You'll cross the threshold as them. The layer underneath, faithful as always, will receive them. And tomorrow, in small ways you may not yet notice, the work will already be underway. Do this every night, without performance, without strain, without checking. Just one quiet minute of inhabiting, slipped into the very last conscious minute of your day, in place of the scrolling, or the worrying, or the replaying. 1 minute, every night, for as long as it takes. Within weeks, the inner voice will start muttering the lines of the new self during the day, without any prompting from you. Within months, the new self will become your default. Within a year, you won't even recognize the version of you who used to cross the threshold as the old one. You'll have become someone else, gently, in the dark, one absorbent minute at a time, while the world was too busy to notice. And the world, in its own time, will catch up. The conditions of your life, downstream from the floor you're rebuilding every night, will start rearranging themselves around the new self. Not because you forced them to, because you became someone they could no longer match in the old way. The most powerful minute of your day is the one you've been throwing away. Tonight, take it back. Cross the threshold as the new you, and let the layer underneath finally do what it's been waiting all this time to do for you. Sleep well, my friends. Tomorrow you wake up a little closer to home. Thank you, and good evening. This is Neville Lectures. I'll see you in the next video.